the February 10th, 2026 meeting of the Dover School Committee. My name is Goli Sapir and I call this meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. We are pleased to hold this open meeting at Dover Sherborne Middle School Library this evening and are also live streaming with DSC TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. First on our agenda this evening is community comments. We have provided a Zoom link for those who wish to make a comment, but for whom it is not possible or prefer to attend in person this evening. Before going to community comments, I wanted to remind all of us that community comments are an opportunity for members of the school committee to listen to members of the community. It is not a forum for answering questions or engaging in a debate. We respectfully request that you please make your comment brief, no more than 3 minutes, and that you move the discussion forward by adding new information. Please try to avoid repeating points that have already been made. Once the public comment section of the meeting has been concluded, we will move on to the other business, and unsolicited comments from the community will no longer be permitted. This is standard operation procedure in school committee meetings across the 3 school districts. With that being said, do we have any community comments in person or on Zoom? Sure. Okay.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? No estás bien porque no español en 2027 están en Chickering. Sí, no estás bien.
You wanted to know what they were saying. They were saying that they're upset that we'll be no longer having Spanish in the elementary school.
Yes, as you can see, we have learned a lot in the Spanish classes and can have a full conversation in Spanish.
We got 46 signatures and are still collecting more, so we think that other people want to keep Spanish too.
Benefits of Spanish. It's easier to learn a language when you're younger.
Spanish is one of the most popular languages around the world, so knowing it when traveling is very helpful. There will be a disadvantage in middle school if we do not keep it.
Grades will be lower than they have before, and students will be expected to know more than they already do. This is the levels of a language. Right now, students exiting the elementary schools are at a novice high to intermediate low level, learning using sentences or always using sentences. And with lack of Spanish in the elementary schools, students entering the middle school will have novice low to novice mid level of experience. Now moving on to Spanish teachers.
One of the 5th grade Spanish teachers, Senora Marinelli, Senora Swan. She plays fun games. We have jobs in her class which teach us responsibility. She is amazing. Liv Cassidy and Mary Miller. 2nd and 3rd grade teacher, Senora Marinelli. She does fun game sound noises when you get a question right or wrong, and we play games that teach us just numbers, sentences, words, and etc.
Senora Brown is our kindergarten and 1st grade Spanish teacher. She does fun activities. She teaches us songs in Spanish. I love it when she plays stories in Spanish so that we can all follow along. Natalie Miller.
Yo necesito español.
Thank you. Do we have more community comments? Do we have any community comments on Teams? On Google? Sorry.
Google Meet.
Google Meet. All right. Now, moving on to our next item on our agenda, which is superintendent comments.
Thank you. So I'm going to defer at this point to wait till we get to the discussion items.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next on the agenda is financial reports.
Good evening, everyone. In your packet for tonight, you have a rather lengthy warrant report since the last time we actually met formally from a finance part for your committee was in November. Again, I think Jesse is just going over and signing these. If you ever have any questions, we have hard copies in the office as well as town hall. bringing you up to speed on where we stand right now with fiscal year 26. Keep in mind that the new information is in bold, and so the last set of financials you had was as of a date in October. We're bringing this forward to February 6th. There were a couple of things that were happening in the fall that did not get incorporated into your November report, so you'll see some bold information that wasn't necessarily new, but that we just needed to incorporate given the time when we did your report back in November. So just to highlight, and we've been talking about this in the budget as well, we have reallocated responsibilities for the pre-K director. It's now encompassed in the responsibilities of the Pine Hill SPED educator who does both pre-K programs. And so there are savings of per year of $15,000 from that. We also had a retirement in the front office of our administrative assistant. So her longevity with us, as well as converting that position from a 12-month to a 10-month, gave us a nice savings of about $25,000. And then we had a swing from a negative variance to a positive variance in your educator classroom due to some leave of absences that closed out and put some additional funds back into your budget. That is it on the salary and expenditures. As far as new information on out of district, as we know, that's constantly fluxing. And we did have some changes to the positive. Luckily, there were some placement changes that resulted in about $50,000 worth of savings, so that's being reflected in your statement. I will say when we report back out in March, you're probably going to see that number fluctuate again because I'm aware of some pending placements that will probably take away some of that savings and bring our variance back up to maybe where it was. So right now we're looking at an out-of-district negative variance all in with transportation of just under $900,000. I just want to remind the committee that we knew we were going to be about $500,000 over. So the differential really is about $400,000, so it's not as bad as it appears. But as we know, that's been our sort of our normal protocols here because we do not budget for any unknowns in the Dover budget, knowing that we have the circuit breaker to fall back on. Any questions on your current status of appropriations?
Any questions? No. Thank you. Thank you, Val. So next, moving on to next on our item on our agenda, which is discussion items.
All right, thank you. So the first discussion item is the continued discussion of the proposed elementary schedule shift. I'm going to start by thanking the parents and guardians who sent in feedback either through school committee members or directly through email. I especially want to thank our students for using their voice and agency to come tonight. I'm super proud of you for getting up here and sharing your thoughts and opinions, and they will certainly be considered as we move forward and figure out how best to achieve our goals. So thank you for coming. I did compile some feedback and prepared some thoughts. There was lots of questions, so I did write out my statements just to make sure that I don't miss anything. I'm going to cover some big picture ideas around the context and the decision-making process, and then Assistant Superintendent Conklin will go into the details of the proposed schedule. So in terms of the context and the timeline, this was not an easy decision. It was thoughtfully considered by district and building leaders over the course of more than a year, with ongoing input from educators throughout that time. We recognize that this conversation is understandably emotional, as it involves educators, their professional roles, and programs that matter deeply to our community. We also recognize that to families and community members, this decision may feel rushed. In reality, it reflects a year-long study conducted by district and building leaders, educational professionals with deep expertise in curriculum, instruction, child development, and school operations who carefully examined how instructional time is allocated across the elementary day. At the core of this work is a simple but complex challenge: how to best use a finite school day to meet growing and competing demands. These include the implementation of Reveal Math, preparation for an upcoming ELA curriculum adoption, increasing social emotional learning needs, and our responsibility to meet state-required frameworks across multiple content areas. This decision is not driven by budget constraints within the towns, but by a commitment to maximizing instructional time in ways that best support student learning. In terms of stakeholder input and decision-making, In considering how best to gather input on the elementary schedule, we carefully weighed the potential benefits and challenges of involving each stakeholder group. While forming a committee can be effective in some contexts, we determined it would not provide the most constructive or candid feedback in this case. In terms of involving specialists, including art, PE, Spanish, music, and library teachers, the relatively small number of educators, each deeply committed to their content area, could make a collaborative committee setting challenging, as participants might feel pressured to advocate primarily for their own discipline. In terms of involving classroom teachers, we sought to avoid placing teachers in a position where they might feel uncomfortable recommending adjustments to specialist time in order to preserve or expand classroom instruction. In terms of involving parents, families provide valuable perspectives, but naturally bring individual priorities regarding which subjects they consider most important. In this context, consensus would be difficult to find. District and school administrators are uniquely positioned to evaluate the system as a whole. From a 100-foot view as a principal and a 30,000-foot or a 10,000-foot view as a superintendent, we analyze data, understand state standards, and see firsthand how daily schedules impact student learning, teacher practice, and the overall classroom experience across multiple school and multiple grade levels. This professional expertise guided our approach and ensured that recommendations are grounded in evidence, best practice, and the full context of instructional needs. Again, not an easy decision. In terms of supporting the whole child, as we continue our 11th year as a Challenge Success District, myself being the #1 advocate, we remain committed to balancing high academic achievement with a focus on the whole child. Decision-making relies not only on traditional quantitative measures such as MCAS, but also on qualitative indicators, including social-emotional learning data and students' progress towards portrait of a graduate competencies. Together, these measures provide a holistic view of student growth, engagement, and well-being. In terms of focusing on academic excellence and system coherence, the district remains firmly focused on academic excellence and on the established drivers of sustained student growth and achievement. Research and practice consistently demonstrate that no single initiative, program, or schedule change produces meaningful improvement in isolation. Rather, student outcomes improve when multiple interdependent elements of an instructional system are intentionally aligned and implemented together over time. So as a district, we believe in highly effective educators who consistently use research-based practices, including the district's 9 best practices. We believe in evidence-based, standards-aligned curriculum, including the adoption of a Reveal Math and the forthcoming literacy program. We believe in embedded and sustained professional learning, supported through the proposed creation of 2 K-12 curriculum coordinator positions, allowing elementary instructional coaches to focus on in-classroom support for teachers. We believe in time and organizational structures that support learning, hence the proposed elementary schedule moving forward. We believe in strong instructional leadership and school culture, grounded in the district vision and distributed leadership model, including principals, instructional coaches, PLC leaders, curriculum leaders, and department chairs. And we believe in family and community engagement, supported through transparent communication, shared resources, and strategic use of community education to extend opportunities, including elementary world language experiences moving forward. Meaningful improvement in student growth and achievement requires that these elements function collectively as a coherent system. Adjustments to curriculum, professional learning, leadership structures, and scheduling must be implemented together to maximize impact. The proposed schedule changes are one component of this broader system designed to align time, resources, and leadership capacity to strengthen student learning and long-term academic outcomes. And in terms of the FLES program and Spanish instruction, the FLES program has many strengths, most notably its dedicated educators and strong curriculum. I will repeat, including its dedicated educators and strong curriculum. I've worked closely with the FLES team as students transitioned to world language from the elementary to the middle school and the middle school and the high school, my own children included. And I deeply value the impact they have had on our students. Elementary classroom teachers may understandably feel conflicted, wanting to support their colleagues and the richness of the Spanish program, while also recognizing the need for additional time to meet core academic expectations. We recognize that Spanish may be a source of joy and engagement for many students. At the same time, students also thrive through deeper learning in science, social studies, art, music, and technology. This adjustment is intended to provide a more balanced opportunity for all students to engage meaningfully across disciplines. While this change is not ideal for the Spanish program, we are pleased to retain Spanish as a once per week exploratory experience at the elementary level. This is not intended to be the first step towards the elimination of the program learning. In fact, we've kept it purposefully. We will continue to offer language-based learning opportunities both in school and after school.
Thank you, Superintendent McCoy. I also wanted to just kind of review the results of some of the educator feedback that we got through the survey that we gave to educators. So again, as I talked about last week, one thing that we heard from many of the educators is that our current schedule feels very fragmented and choppy, that it feels like there's a rushed kind of pacing throughout the school day because you're going from place to place throughout the day, and a lot of things are happening because of the way the clock dictates it, not based upon kind of what we know is best for instruction. Some teachers talked about the fact that you have blocks of time that are different every day. So your math block on one day might be 50 minutes, the next day it might be 40 minutes, the next day it might be 65 minutes. So we have schedule logistical challenges as well that the educators pointed out. A lot of people pointed out science and social studies, saying that for some of our most vulnerable learners, that's the part that engages them the most, and they really would like to see science and social studies not be an afterthought, but be something that we are more intentional as a district about addressing. We heard about having more time for social emotional learning, ways to build that in through the school day in a more formal way. We heard from teachers that right now in morning meeting, for example, we've been trying to cram a lot of things in to address some of our time constraints. So in morning meeting, where students are supposed to gather and build community, we've been saying, well, that could be a place to throw in some grammar or some math fluency. And we really think with this new schedule, we can redirect morning meeting to its intended purpose, have the SEL pieces in there, and we can have those academic pieces live in these longer blocks of time that students are going to have. We heard feedback about the WIN block, so specifically at Chickering, that 40 minutes just felt too long for the WIN block. So people said that if you're going to be looking at instructional time, don't just look at specials, also look at the WIN block. We got some people raising questions about the time that's spent on Spanish at the elementary level, but there's also a lot of support in the educator feedback for their colleagues, for the program, what they've seen the program be able to give. So we got a feedback from both sides on that part of it. There was a lot of feedback about the excitement about expanding library and technology into their own weekly specials. People pointed out that we're living in the digital age. Right now, we rely on push-in for technology, or teachers have to take time out of their classroom instruction to be doing this technology work. And I know that a couple of meetings ago, we talked a lot about the future of AI and where we're going to build in those AI literacy skills. Again, that's something else that we're trying to fit in and squeeze into a finite amount of time, like Superintendent McCoy noticed. And then there were comments that just wanted us to be mindful of the whole child, not making it so if we're going to have longer blocks of instructional time that students are just sitting there the whole time. So we've thought a lot about how we build more movement in throughout the day. I think there's a lot of active learning that can happen. So we're not looking at 60, 70-minute instructional blocks where kids are just sitting on the rug or sitting at their desk. There's lots of different strategies and lots of different tools that we're hoping to offer our educators through professional learning, through coaches. So we make sure that those are really deeply engaging blocks that are full of movement. So one of the things that was raised when we're thinking about the whole child is not wanting the day to feel so academic. Academics are really important, but making sure that we're not spending and kind of putting more pressure on our students, creating more anxiety for them around academics. I did some calculations, and right now when we think about a student's daily life at Chickering, about 42% to 48% of that time is being spent on either math, ELA, social studies, or science. So that means between 58% and 52% is being spent on those non-instructional core academic areas. So that includes the specials, that includes Spanish, lunch and recess, morning meeting, WIN time. With the proposed schedule changes that we're making, we would increase core instructional time to between 58 to 61% of the day. So you're still looking at 42% of the day that is going to be less structured time for our students. So I know that's a concern that we've heard about. We don't want to have everybody structured, scheduled in again. So even with these changes, we're able to increase our instructional time in those core academic areas while at the same time, I think, still preserving a lot of the joy and the movement and the flexibility of the school day. Again, like Superintendent McCoy pointed out, I think, these conversations that we're having, a lot of them are about what might be lost and this idea of what we're losing, which is the 2 blocks of Spanish a week. But again, I think it's important to think about all the things that we're gaining. Every spring, Superintendent McCoy and I, we meet with 4th and 5th graders and have lunch with them and hear what they have to say. We've heard for a couple of years now that the upper grades still want library, that they feel like just having 10 minutes for book checkout isn't enough. We're excited about the potential for what technology can offer and having dedicated time for that. Technology isn't going to be just sitting in front of a computer and learning. There's robotics. There's all sorts of hands-on activities that are going to be part of that time. And like Superintendent McCoy said, we know so many of our students have found their spark in their learning from the FLES program. I don't think you can deny that. But at the same time, there's other kids that might find their spark of joy in technology or in the extended library time, in the new music workshop that we're going to offer. Maybe it might even be in health instruction, learning about physical, mental, emotional wellness is something that really sparks their curiosity. So we're hoping to just create a really well-rounded program for our students through this schedule shift. I know another thing that popped up last week when we were talking was thinking about some of our comparable districts. So we've done research on our comparable districts. I think it was interesting to note that Concord Carlisle, and let's see, there's another district here. Concord Carlisle and Lincoln Sudbury all have a once-a-week Spanish program. There are some districts like Wellesley, 3 times a week for 30 minutes. But there's a lot of variation. In Bedford, for example, they only do their Spanish program in grades 3 through 5. In Medfield, they just do it in grades 2 through 5. In Weston, they just do it in grades 1 through 5, 2 times a week. So there is a lot of variation, but we aren't the first district that has made this shift to doing the 1 time a week and kind of making it an exploratory program. So thinking about next steps, I'll turn it back over to Superintendent McCoy.
Is it possible to mention the districts that don't have FLES at this point?
Yes. So districts without, or comparable districts that don't have an elementary world language program, Acton-Boxborough, Hopkinton, Lexington, and Wayland do not currently have elementary world language programs. We also noted last week that there are a lot of other districts just like us that are doing this instructional time study and a study of the elementary schedules. So it's not just Dover-Sherborne that's in this predicament about trying to squeeze out minutes. Other districts are also in the process of completing their own studies.
And just thinking about all the feedback that we've received, I just want to mention that some of the districts that Denny just mentioned that don't have FLES also have MCAS scores that are higher than ours. So for those who are concerned that taking away MCAS or taking away FLES is going to impact our MCAS scores, I don't think there's a direct correlation. That said, in terms of next steps, while we did provide updates to the school committees in January of 2025, April of 2025, and then November of 2025. February 3rd was the first time that we were able to put together a proposal, and we're hoping that tonight the Dover School Committee can have continued discussion about that proposal and then come together with the Sherborne School Committee on the 24th to continue your discussion and deliberation. Ideally, both committees will be able to come to a shared understanding consensus because we want both schools to have an equitable learning experience as they prepare for the middle school. Reaching clarity before March is important, as many decisions have implications for the town budgets, as well as there are contractual requirements regarding connecting with educators about their employment status. This requires thoughtful decision-making while allowing the district to meet its planning and contractual obligations responsibly. And just as a note, should the proposed elementary schedule not move forward, just so you have both perspectives and both visions, students will not have a designated technology and engineering special that includes keyboarding, coding, robotics, and AI literacy. Though the technology educator will continue to push into classrooms as allowed. Grades 3 through 5 will not have library or media specials, but will retain a brief weekly book checkout. Students will not receive formal health instruction, including nutrition, personal safety, physical, emotional, mental health, relationships, hygiene, and substance use. Though 5th graders will continue to have lessons on human growth and maturation. Science and social studies instruction will continue, but with fewer hands-on and project-based learning opportunities. The number of specials will vary across grade levels and schools, creating inequity. Music programming changes will proceed. Music workshop will be offered as an alternative to band so that all students have access to music during that period. SEL curriculum implementation will continue regardless. And the WIN block will be reduced to 20 minutes, which is more developmentally appropriate. We hope that this was helpful as you continue your deliberation and are happy to answer any questions you or the community have.
Thank you very much both for detailed information. Any questions?
Yes, I have some.
Yeah.
Thanks. So thank you so much for having this meeting again. I feel like this is a really important decision for everybody. Thank you all for coming. And it's great to, have a chance to sort of work through some stuff some more. Especially thank you for putting together the FAQs. I think that was really helpful. Thank you, girls, for presenting. That was amazing. I'm so impressed. So my focus, or sort of my questions, are sort of more follow-ups to some of the things in the FAQs, and more focused on sort of like the student experience as opposed to the other pieces of it. So one big question I'm hearing is, what other sort of curriculum and schedule changes were explored? Like, what other models did you work through other than just Spanish 3-2, PE 2-1? Like, what else was explored, and why did those options not work?
Yep. So there are a number of different options that we explored. When we were looking at our comparable districts, one of the things we looked at was, what if we just kept the program as is in grades 3, 4, and 5, and you're thinking about that ramp up to middle school. When we thought about that more, we realized that those were actually the grades where we're trying to squeeze out more instructional time. 4 and 5 specifically, where you start to have band, music lessons, you have all kind of the full band that meets in grades 4 and 5, you have convocation. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders were pulled in a lot of different directions, so we realized that we actually wouldn't be solving the problem if we kept it as is in 3, 4, and 5. There was a time where we looked at, what does it look like if we just cut the entire program? And again, we can do feedback from educators and the value that it has to the community, not wanting to eliminate that opportunity and give students that exposure. I think the cultural appreciation and learning more about parts around the world was a reason to make sure that we kept that in. So those were a lot of the different options that we looked at when we were trying to consider ways to go.
And so was it always sort of Spanish that was the focus, because there was no other sort of area that could give because of DESE?
So music was one of the areas that we looked at.
Yeah.
There's not a ton to change in music because the parts are really essential. Having band and instrument lessons, having convocation didn't seem like something that we could move or decrease anymore. General music is something that is typical in every elementary school, to have the general music and the band. We already, in Dover Sherburne, we don't have a strings program, so there wasn't a lot to cut in terms of music except moving that recorder piece in 3rd grade, where right now it's its own block of time, into general music, which again, in every district we looked at, recorder was blended into general music. So we get that. We felt like it was fair to look at everything, so it didn't feel like it was just a Spanish decision.
Yeah.
That's why we looked at WIN as well. So we thought 120 minutes right now is not something that is working for a lot of our students, a lot of our educators, so that got decreased. So we tried to pull from multiple areas, so it felt like we were kind of pulling from different places, not all from one place.
And was it ever a consideration to do Spanish twice a week, or to have Spanish push into the classroom instead of the kids transitioning to the Spanish room, or the classroom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that already happens, I believe, in kindergarten and 1st grade, because we're not trying to transition them in and out. But we kind of had a situation where we already have teachers that have their own classrooms, and they have all of the important vocabulary words and visuals in the classroom. I think especially at the upper levels, it's important that they have all those resources kind of handy to them so they can teach with them. So in terms of having like the upper grades go push into the classroom, we want to make sure that the teachers would still have the resources that they needed.
Okay, so I'd love to move on to PE, if that's okay, because I feel like that's a big, even though it's only moving one PE or 2 PEs down to 1, I think that's still a big thing. So I know, Denny, you had mentioned that with the reduction of PE from twice a week to once a week, that the younger grades would have more outdoor time. Is this something that could happen for all grades? Especially if we're talking about longer blocks of kids sitting in their classrooms learning. I know we're talking about movement breaks and everything, but can we get these kids outside again during the day? or if we're not using the gym for as much time as we work, can they have some sort of, indoor recess in the gym?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we specifically talked about was kindergarten, first grade. At Pine Hill, for example, they have 2 recesses.
Yeah.
So that's something that we can look into formalizing the schedule at Chickering. And I think we kind of looked at some of these schedules in theory, and we actually need to sit down and build them all out for each grade level in each classroom. It's something we can consider, Superintendent McCoy.
Yeah, and I'll also say, I was the district administrator who took our 4 principals back in 2019 to Finland, so I completely understand the importance of outdoor time and play and have tried to integrate that more into the district. And the conversations I've been having with Denny are around, we're getting these minutes back. How can we ensure that, yes, we're meeting the DESE standards, but also making sure that they are deep learning opportunities for kids, that they're not sitting and reading textbooks and doing writing, that they're engaged, that they're moving. And I also think that what's going to be important is not only for, our principals and our coaches, our principals to hold teachers accountable to getting outside and having that movement and the engaging activities, but for our coaches to be side by side with them. As you've heard in other presentations, our coaches right now are pulled in too many directions and they're not able to spend as much time in the classroom as they want. That's a critical piece. Now, the other critical piece in terms of getting those coaches to have more time in the classrooms is those curriculum coordinators. And I think that now that we're looking at implementing health, we're looking at redesigning K-5 Spanish, we're looking at having a set technology and engineering block, we're looking at adding music workshop. A curriculum leader is more important now than ever to make sure that the curriculum that we're delivering is robust, that the instruction that we're providing these kids in all of our courses is engaging, and there's movement and there's breaks. So while the budget is not helpful in terms of adding those, I do think it goes back to the comments I made that this is a whole piece, a whole puzzle. And I feel strongly like the district has made huge moves towards adopting a solid curriculum and identifying best practices. I do think we need the curriculum coaches. I do think that we need to have the curriculum coordinators and the coaches in place. I do think we need to have a shift in the schedule to make all of these pieces come together. Movement needs to be part of that conversation.
And fresh air.
How do we isolate the budgetary issues from the scheduling issues? Because if budgetary concerns are driving a factor in the structure of the day and the educational program, that's something that we could also address separately with the town if needed. I presume, I don't know if that's true or not, but I want to make sure we're making the right decision educationally and then considering the constraints and what can and cannot be improved that would allow us to provide the best educational experience possible. So is budget, like I said, simply, are any budgetary constraints requiring these types of changes with the coordinators, with the time of the number of hours in the day, anything else that we should be thinking about?
No, and Denny and I have been talking about this for 2 years, that we started the instructional leadership study a year and a half ago in the summer of 2024.
Yeah.
And didn't expect it to kind of come up with a proposal in January of 2026. We started the elementary time schedule study last year, didn't expect to have a proposal in January of 2026. We didn't expect that time to also coincide with negotiations where anxiety and stress is also high in terms of making sure that educators have a fair and reasonable contract that allows them to sustain their living and also for the district to be competitive and for it to be at a time where we'd be informed by both towns that they're under budget constraints. It's the perfect storm. So if the instructional leadership study was done any other time, you would hear the same thing you're hearing in January of 2026, where we need those curriculum coordinators and we need to better support our curriculum leaders and department chairs at the high school. If the elementary time schedule landed in any other month, you'd hear the same thing, that we need to make these shifts in the schedule. It just so happens that they're landing in January, where we're at the negotiation table. We have assured the teachers that there is a reserve to make sure that they not only get their steps and lanes, but also a COLA. And we are able to say to both Dover and Sherburne that through this and lots of other changes and sacrifices, this not being one of them, we are able to save the towns the money that they need.
Is the school day set in terms of that time period? We need more time, it sounds like. we can't keep kids indefinitely, but like, have we ever considered adjusting the standard school day?
We have not. We adjusted the beginning of the school day for the adolescent sleep issue. We have not thought about extending the school day. I think that is a huge undertaking that would take years. If that's something that the school committees and the boards of select people are interested in, we can certainly explore that. I think what is the compromise in the short term is that reverting back to the way that world language was supported pre-FLES is through the community ed program after school, and providing that extended school day and access to French, perhaps Mandarin, perhaps Italian after school.
Sorry, I'm not as familiar with that one. Can you give me the context of what that program is?
Sure. So the after school program oversees both the extended day programs where students can stay after school until their parents are able to pick them up, and enrichment opportunities such as the Cupcake Club and the Chess Club.
Yeah.
And prior to FLES, there was opportunities for students to engage in world language after school. And then I'm going to actually turn it over to Dawn because she was on the committee and can talk about the switch from it being an after-school program to being embedded in the school day.
Right. I mean, I had the unique situation of being here. I actually was the chair of the Dover School Committee when we voted to bring FLES into the school district. So I do have a passion for the program. I will be frank with you and say, though, it was a parent-driven initiative that was brought into the school. So it wasn't the educator saying we needed this. It actually took parents about 2 years to get to a point where Dover School Committee looked at it seriously. Dover School Committee got through pretty seriously with looking at it, so much so that then we engaged Sherburne to join with us because it didn't make sense in our district to have it happen in Chickering and not happen in Pine Hill. So that took another, a lot of work to bring them on board. I will tell you, one of the biggest concerns from the educators, and I feel like I'm sitting in that room still listening to it, was time on learning. And so we worked really hard to craft the program because, Dover Sherburne doesn't do anything simply. We wanted to be strong enough that it was going to make a difference. But it was originally sort of worked so that it was going to be an analogy that we use and I still use and love was that we have a gallon of water. And so we want to add Spanish. We don't have any more room to add water, but we're going to add coloring to it. So we're going to incorporate Spanish in science and social studies, right? And so you're learning it and supporting it. I don't think that was necessarily maybe feasible to do. I think we tried. But now I think it's a point where, think about now it's 14 years later. Curriculum has changed. Demands have changed. I personally, and I fought really hard for it, thinks that we need to let some of that go, still keeping it for a special, but it's quantity over quality or quantity over quality, right? Can't say that. Quality over quantity. So I think we can still do a lot in that special. And we got some of our data from interest in parents wanting to have elementary experience of foreign language by how popular the community ed classes were. So we had Spanish that was offered, and those were always waitlisted. So once we brought it into the elementary school, and remember we started one grade at a time because we wanted to build a really strong program, and it also allowed us to more levelly increase the budget year over year for the two towns rather than trying to bring it all in at once. We let go of that program. But we have re-engaged with the same company that did that back for us back in 2010 and before, is still around, and they're offering Italian, Mandarin. So we feel like that's a way that we can also fulfill some of the needs of parents who want to continue that, because any language, it's not Spanish, any language just learning is a good basis, and that can maybe collaborate with what is happening in the school day once a week.
So that could be potentially re-added into the after-school program.
Yep, we've already started we've already started talking to them to see what our opportunities are. I would say once we get over this and make that decision, we'll send out a survey to parents to see what languages they might be interested in.
Yeah.
They run 10-week programs, and they're good. I mean, my kids did. That's what I didn't have left when my kids were in Chickering. So it's a great way. But I will say there's still so many tenets of what we have done over the last 14 years that'll stay there. I mean, I think an international night. That came because one of the goals of bringing FLES in was more cultural awareness. And that will stay. I mean, that's not going to go away. And some of the stuff that's already embedded in how Spanish is incorporated, that won't go away either. So I think you have to look back. You're not losing the Spanish program. You're still going to have the Spanish program, but you're now going to have more time to do all the other demands that we have for more well-rounded students. And again, I think they were afraid initially to talk about this in front of me because they knew how hard I'd worked to get it. But I think there is a time for everything. And I will say, as a former school committee member, I feel like we're here to support school committee members, but you've got very highly skilled, passionate people. It'd be easier not to make this decision. You've got to think about it that. It'd be easier not to make this decision. But they're bringing forward what they think is best, and I think you have to take that into consideration. Because there are the educators, and so I think that's where sometimes you defer if you trust and respect what they're doing, and I think we've had great changes in this district over the time that Beth has been on board. So I hope that you take that into consideration when you make this decision, but I do think it's a move that makes sense, and I think we're going to be better for it.
Yeah, I totally respect that, and like we've hired great administrators to make these decisions. So I appreciate the opportunity to learn more, and like largely like trust your assessments. I think the thing that have learned tonight that I didn't learn I missed a prior meeting, so apologies for that. But the alternatives are also not great, right? Like we lose coding and technology. We lose a lot of physical education through the health program. Like there's trade-offs for any decisions, and like I don't know which is better or worse, but those are also not great alternatives from what I can tell.
And I think it's a yes and. I would love to have 3 or 4 days of FLES and all of the other standards. I would love to lengthen the school day, and that's not going to be easy or inexpensive to do.
Yeah.
And Denny said it at the last meeting, the Spanish program is strong. The educators are incredible. The curriculum is amazing. The kids enjoy it. And there's technology standards and opportunities the kids don't have. There are health standards that they do not have. There are social studies and science standards they do not have. And I would argue that had we been spending the last 10 years on social studies or science or technology, you'd also have a room full of educators and kids saying, don't cut that to make room for Spanish.
Right.
This is not easy. I love the FLES program. My son was the first kid in kindergarten to take it all the way through. And I've worked with the educators as it transitioned from elementary school to middle school to high school as Denny. This is not easy. It's just a matter of trying to balance everything.
My question is with the fairly new math program and also coming up new ELA, is this going to be too much of a change for our schools to handle, bringing in new coding, technology, health, and is it really feasible, or should we really have a little bit of a longer term plan to implement these changes? Because I don't know if you think this is feasible, all of these changes at the same time.
I'll start and then you can finish. So, you've been in the role 4 years. So the look at the math curriculum started 5 years ago when I was in Denny's position. So it took us 5 years to roll it out and kind of get it off and rolling. The literacy review started 2 years ago and we're moving. So as you know, educators at every level have their own challenges. I think that the challenge of elementary educators and their unique superpower is to be able to teach multiple subjects. And we can't ask them to do a curriculum overhaul in math and literacy at the same time, which is why we've been staggering them. So I think that hopefully as we pilot literacy next year and then roll out a program the following year, math will be well underway. In terms of science, social studies, Denny's expertise is in social studies. He's already been working with grades 3 through 5 on implementing an inquiry-based investigating history program. We need to bring that down K to 2. In terms of science, I know we have an elementary principal with a background in science. I know we have a superintendent with a background in science. Ideally, this is where the curriculum coordinator would come in. And as you heard from all three of us, how disappointed we are that it doesn't fit the numbers, but how relieved and excited we are to hear how passionate both school committees are in terms of making at least one curriculum coordinator position come to fruition. We need that help to be able to carve out time and professional development and sustained support in the classroom for returning to the FOSS kits in science, if that's what we decide, looking at investigating history K-2, and then working with our engineering and technology teachers, working with our new health teacher, working with our music teachers to carve out the other things, because those aren't going to happen in isolations, and those aren't going to happen by simply one person. We need all of those pieces. We need the schedule, we need the curriculum coordinators, we need the new curriculums, all of it.
Is the curriculum coordinator proposal been denied?
Well, so you were at 2 meetings ago
Yeah.
when we said, after a year-long study and adjusting our needs at the middle school and high school, listening to feedback in terms of what the middle school curriculum leaders and the high school curriculum leaders and their colleagues wanted, it became known that really the focus of those instructional leaders was to be 80% in the classroom, because that's their strength and that gives them the credibility to understand what it's like to be working with students and what our current population is like. That leaves them 20% of their time to be working with educators, which isn't enough. Yeah. So the offset was to hire 2 curriculum coordinators K-12. Unfortunately, given the budget restraints, and here's where the budget comes in, adding curriculum coordinators at this time to a budget where we need to subtract things is not ideal. And, my concern is adding administrators when we are subtracting educators, particularly at the middle and high school level, is not ideal either. Yep. However, having sat through the last meeting, I think it's clear that, if we're going to move forward the district goals and the instructional agenda, while I know that educators have an opinion about this and instructional leaders have an opinion about this, Denny and I were hired to look at the K-12 structure, and we understand how the transition from elementary to middle to high school goes and what changes need to happen at all those levels. So there needs to be trust in our decision making to say this is necessary to make the whole puzzle work. Every other district has at least 2, and aside from one other comparable district, has curriculum leaders and department chairs who teach less than 80%. We have none of that right now. And if you want all of us to move forward, we're hearing feedback that we want academic excellence, that we want to look at the whole child. We can't do that alone. And there needs to be trust that we can see the larger picture.
Can we go back to it?
We are bringing forward in your budget tonight to add 1 curriculum coordinator to the K-12 district.
Yeah, I mean, as a member of the school board, I would be happy to entertain budget asks. I just don't know the process by which to do that for the town.
Well, it's in your budget tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one sort of. Oh, go ahead.
Go just to kind of answer another part of the question too about are teachers prepared and whatnot. Another thing that we can be looking at probably 4th and 5th, maybe 3rd grade is in some elementary schools they departmentalize. So one teacher will teach science, one will teach social studies. So then we're not asking our classroom teachers to take on both. It also gives some of our older students a chance to switch and have a different teacher. So that's a way that we can help support or potentially support our teachers so it doesn't feel like it's too much change. 5th grade, that Chickering is already doing some of that departmentalizing.
And then in terms of the schedule, you're proposing that the proposal is for all the grade levels to have 1 day of Spanish. Have you thought about for like younger kids, is it more efficient if they have shorter sessions but more frequent, but then as they gain some experience, get more comfortable, they have, for example, 4th and 5th grade, or I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, then they have once a week. Have you thought about this type of scheduling?
I'll say I think one of the magical tools that our class teachers have is the ability to engage kids and to maximize 40 minutes. And I think that's a skill that they can model for all of our teachers. So I think having 40 minutes is not against developmental appropriateness for K-2. I think, in fact, that's their magic. And I think that it will inspire that love of learning and help it stick. The other piece, and do you want to finish that and then I'll go back to
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add one thing that also connects to something that you said, Kate, about other options that we considered. Another reason why we didn't necessarily consider like 2 times a week is just thinking about kind of long-term sustainability. Because if we continue to have these questions about instructional time, we don't want to reduce it 2 times a week and then be going back next year and saying, we might need to cut it back again. As Superintendent McCoy said, we feel like this once a week is something that we can kind of give peace of mind that this is how it's going to be. We're not going to go back and look at it next year and say, let's get rid of the program as a whole. And I don't think that's fair to reduce it 2 times a week and have that constant lingering question of, well, this could be the year where they go and ask us to reduce it even more. So we feel like this is kind of a more solid solution to give more consistency and peace of mind to the path forward for the program.
Can we go back to a few other just questions about the proposed schedule? So health would be added, and then the music workshop would be added. Can you just talk a little bit about those? Like, I would love to know, what does health look like for a second grader? I have no idea. Like, what is that? Yeah.
Yep. So we've, again, started to tinker with how health might look, since it would be shared between Pine Hill and Chickering. We haven't had the best luck sometimes at sharing staff between buildings. So something that we've talked about is, what if we divided up the year into kind of 4-week increments? So the health teacher was at Chickering for 4 weeks and then at Pine Hill for 4 weeks, pushing into probably 2 grades at a time for week-long units, 2-week-long units. We think we can find some time in the wind blocks as well to do some of this. What would health look like at an early level? That's thinking about relationships, friendships, how you are a good friend to others, how sometimes you can strive to be a better friend. It's the basic parts of nutrition and thinking about how we can nourish our bodies and create strong bodies. It's thinking about choices and decision making. So it's not just like all anatomy, learning about parts of the body and whatnot, but it's all these various parts about how we can kind of live healthy lifestyles, not only physically, but in our relationships and our friends, and how we can have balance in our lives. Mindfulness is part of the health curriculum. And then when you get into the upper grades, that's when you start to look at, mental health, substance use and misuse, and the topics get a little bit more sophisticated for the upper grades. So that's the health piece of it. Then music workshop, again, if you're in 4th and 5th grade and you choose not to do an instrument right now, you go back to the classroom, and sometimes you're going to be doing independent reading. Sometimes you might have some enrichment extension work. So students aren't getting a music experience if they don't want to play an instrument. And a lot of people don't want to play an instrument for a lot of reasons. So this music workshop would be giving students that do not elect to play an instrument a chance to have some music enrichment. Wayland has this program for students that don't play an instrument. So it looks at anything from music around the world. It can get into creating music and music production. When I was talking to the music director in Wayland, they were saying that sometimes kids want to do more recorder in 4th grade, so they can explore that. But it really has the power to take on the student interests in the class and to kind of move in that direction to explore kind of inquiry questions they have related to music.
And this would be a choice. They're choosing either band or music workshop.
Yep.
So they could not elect to sort of do the WIN or independent reading. It would be one or the other.
Yep.
And do we have resources for those workshops?
Yes. Wayland has also been nice enough to offer us to come there and talk to those educators, collaborate with them, if that's something we end up moving forward with.
That would be an addition. That would be, so we would reduce the Spanish scheduling, and that would increase, one of the areas it would increase would be music workshop, you're saying.
So music workshop is going to happen no matter what.
Music workshop happens.
So recorder going into general music in 3rd grade is going to happen still, regardless of what happens with Spanish. Offered music workshop is something that's going to happen regardless of what happens with Spanish, just because we think that those are good choices for our students.
That time's already there.
The time's already there.
Yep.
What do we add? So technology. There's some in the packet that you sent today. It looks like there's some technology. Obviously, more dedicated time towards Reveal Math and ELA.
Yep. So here you can see in the yellow the things that are changing. So you can see the 6 specials that students would have every week. Obviously, Spanish is a change. Technology is something that's going to be added in every grade. Once we start to get to 4th and 5th grade, where we have band and music workshop, which are not things in grades K through 3, library is going to alternate with technology. So it'll be kind of an every other week type of thing.
So we are reducing Spanish, adding technology, some library, some music workshop.
Yep.
How does this all impact homeroom teachers now? Is there more time for them to prepare? Is there less time for them to prepare? Do they have their kids in the classroom more often, less often? What is the overall impact to our homeroom teachers?
They're going to have their kids in the classroom more often, definitely. And we're trying to kind of also equalize prep time right now. So currently, right now, there's a disparity between the amount of prep time that a kindergarten teacher has versus a 5th grade teacher. So that's just part of trying to balance out within school buildings and between school buildings as well. Some of the instructional time changes Pine Hill has already made. They have longer instructional blocks. They've been able to carve out more time in writing. So part of it is just kind of like a parity thing between the two schools as well, trying to make sure that we're having more equity between schools and then within each school. So teachers are going to still have their one prep a day. They're going to have, in our 6th block, special block, they're going to have time to meet with their grade level teams for common planning time. So they're still going to have these opportunities. They'll still have the lunch and recess off as well.
That is a good question, Jesse. So if we're asking them to do more gen ed teaching, and I know you did the study about how many minutes sort of you're adding. Is it like 100 minutes per class per week, something like that? That they're going to be in gen ed? Just wondering if there are additional prep periods or additional EAs or just another way to support. That's a lot more time for the teachers to be teaching.
Yep. I think, again, that's why we would be looking at potentially that departmentalizing, so the teachers don't have to worry about teaching both science and social studies, but they could kind of specialize in one, kind of own that to help with some of those issues around prep time.
And then another thing. So you mentioned sort of like the parity with Pine Hill, which I completely understand because we want everyone to approach the middle school from the same place. But if they, in one of your early slides the other night, we're talking about they have this ginormous deficit, this $800,000 deficit, and that they're asking to take over $500,000 off the school budget, which is sort of, I don't mean to say like it's a them problem and not an us problem. So I guess if you could explain why we need to take things away from our curriculum because they do, that would be helpful. That's a question I've been sort of getting a lot. Is like, why are we taking our stuff down if we're not the one with the...
From a financial standpoint,
yes.
the plus doesn't really play into this. It's a very small reduction at Pine Hill.
Well, so the Pine Hill piece, sure. But like if we're talking about taking away 1.8, I think, full-time Spanish teachers at Chickering, and we're talking about taking away half of the PE. So this is also, we're reducing so that we're in parity with them, correct?
We're reducing not because of any of the budget pieces of it. If Sherborne didn't have the deficit,
yes,
this would still be what we would be recommending.
Okay.
In terms of reducing the Spanish and A on these other
Okay,
parts.
so that slide was there more for like the regional? Just that, I think it was like slide 2 in your presentation. It was like, oh my gosh, that's a big number that they're asking to come down. So you're saying that has no impact sort of on the choices we're making at Chickering?
It doesn't have any impact really on any of the choices that we're making at any of the 3 districts. So I think we were trying to put that out there to sort of set the scene, right?
Okay.
But everything we're doing, I think best try to re-communicate this out again. Like enrollment's down at the region.
Right.
We're reducing positions because of that.
Okay, so that's the driver.
This is time on learning.
Okay.
That's why this is happening.
Okay.
It's helping solve the problem, but if you believe me, if we needed that money, we would go to bat for it.
Yeah.
And we would tell Sherborne you need to do an override.
Right.
So it's not related at all from a finance position, and I really want to make sure that everyone understands that.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to discuss that here because that is something I hear often. Like, why do we have to pay for their money management?
That has not come into play at all because believe me, we would go fight for an override. We would not cut to sacrifice.
Good.
Either to start.
I don't think that was well understood in the first briefings, but as in more recent discussions, it's become more clear. But the educational coordinator is a budgetary issue, and that would also help alleviate some of the scheduling challenges, as I understood it. So there are some budgetary improvements that could be made if we had there are scheduling improvements could be made were we to have educational coordinators,
yes,
which we do not have.
Which we are though bringing.
We are asking for, yeah,
exactly, and a little extra PD money in both the elementaries to help support because we don't have to. But I think we did. And again, I think Beth mentioned why we felt a little uncomfortable bringing them both forward. Is one,
I understood,
they're asking us to reduce. Here we are throwing on. It was $280,000 for the
coordinators,
and we're also at the same time reducing, educator positions. So it just didn't seem right. But I think that hearing school committee, definitely Dover and Sherborne were so vocal about let's not sacrifice. Let's get it done. So we've worked and we're going to be able to add it into both budgets, all 3 budgets, and probably still be able to give the towns the financial relief that they need. So
And if they're successful, then we'll be back at the table asking for the
more.
additional one next year.
What are we? Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's okay.
Poor Jesse's been so patient, and Kate and I are just asking a million questions. I had it, and now I've lost my note. What do you expect? So Reveal's new-ish.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scheduling tax and having a new curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We're evaluating ELA.
Mm-hmm.
Once those become more stable, do we expect that the scheduling issues will be mitigated a little bit?
Your best answer.
Or are we does that just like part of there'll be something else at that point?
I think these schedule shifts are going to help both the math and ELA curriculum. In order to really do one of the math lessons well right now, like you need a good hour. And some days we're trying to squeeze it into 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Same with ELA, that's going to ask for maybe like a 75-minute block. And if we try to squeeze that into the existing framework for how we can fit things in, then we're going to be sacrificing the quality and the effectiveness of it. So we're kind of setting these changes in place ahead of the ELA implementation so that we're not trying to retrofit once we pick a new program, but so that we can have the structure and the bones in place to absorb that new program and be as successful as possible. Because you're not going to be successful if you're telling teachers you have 50 minutes to teach a 70-minute lesson. Like that, you're kind of doomed from the start if that's the case. And we want to make sure that we're having time for the fun pieces of things like math, like the math games, the math movement breaks. We've talked about movement before. You can ask the literacy coaches. I debuted my new punctuation dance to them on Friday. So if you ever wanted to do a dance with doing a period and a comma, we're going to incorporate all of that. So we want to make sure that we have enough time that we can do the instruction and then also incorporate those fun pieces and the really engaging pieces as well.
I also think it's important to point out the fact that, there's decision making to be made at the district level, but there's also decision making that's happening at the state level. The state is mandating that in both math and literacy, we have high quality instructional materials. So they've given us a list of curricula to choose from, and those are requiring longer blocks of period. We don't have a say in that. As much as I would love to have Spanish 3, 4, 5 times a week, again, I'm passionate about it. We also have other standards that are mandated. World language is not at the elementary level. So we are doing the best we can at the district level to meet both the needs of our communities, but also answer to the state.
Sounds like we need a longer school day.
Yeah, I'll go down. This is a statement. This isn't a question. I think in an ideal world, this would be an and conversation, not an or conversation. I have come away from Plus in person when parents get invited in tears at how great the instruction is. And I think if we look back and think about like what makes Chickering in particular special and unique, its Plus program is in the top considerations for why Chickering is special compared to other top schools. So it's a really, really hard decision, and one that obviously none of us, none of you guys would want to make in an ideal world. That being said, I think we just we try to do what we can to look at the after school programs. Like, let's not get rid of something that's really special, and I think that the kids really, really, really appreciate. So if it looks a little different, if that's the direction we have to go in, or if we can get creative in making sort of an alternative program, I just really encourage us all to sort of roll up our sleeves and think about how we can keep this as part of the Dover sort of fabric, because I think our kids really, really, really appreciate it, as do parents and as does the rest of the community. So.
I think we probably could do a better job at demonstrating like this, maybe it was just published, but in my limited interactions with community members so far, it feels like we're losing Spanish, but what we're gaining isn't as clear.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to probably clarify for parents, like the and.
I think that the short piece, the bullets that you laid out are pretty clear.
The ones that came today?
No.
The summary.
The summary
That came through Parent Square.
They came through Parent Square on February 5th at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Are pretty good. I've been telling people to go to that summary when they don't want the longer review. I think the additional color is always like hearing about what's in the technology piece and what's in the music piece, like sort of those bullets, I think sort of illuminates it more clearly. when you talk about that level of detail as examples of what the curriculum could entail. That's when that was sort of it brought it to life for me today. But I do think that you've really put a great list together of changes from the email you sent on the net.
And just on technology, because I see everything that's purchased, you have a technology specialist in each of the elementary schools that doesn't have a home. So there's great stuff being done where they can figure out where they can go and do it. So as far as having to build a curriculum, they already sort of have a curriculum. Now they're going to have a dedicated space to be able to do it and do it probably a little better. But I see what they buy, what that turns out to be, which I think it'd be great to have everyone be able to take advantage of that. So I don't think that's as much of a heavy lift as it appears when we say we're adding technology. It's there, it just doesn't have a home in the school day.
And then for the after-school program, do you think that's something that we can bring in hopefully
In the fall.
Mm-hmm. And it's in person, right? It's not a virtual.
No, it would be after school. And the classes would be probably like 10 to 15, but we could run grade level ones. There's multiple languages that we can offer, so that they, like I said, we reached out to them. They were excited to re-engage with us, and we can bring that forward starting in the fall. So they're 10-week programs, once a week.
I would want. Sorry, please.
And that's going to be at Chickering, like Pine Hill and Chickering.
Yes. Offered through our community ed program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would wonder if we could restructure how that program runs then. As we start to add enrichment to it, as a parent, it becomes difficult to schedule your week. Like there are a minimum number of days that you could have. Not everyone can get into DITA, as an example. Some of the programs are separate.
That's the aftercare.
Right, but then there's community enrichment that happens certain days a week, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Those are the classes. And those are run separate from DITA?
Yes.
Okay.
And I remember back to
like
the kind of post conversations after we switched the start times for elementary and secondary students, and I think this is right when Denny and I started in our new roles. One of the pieces of feedback is 2:15 to a lot of parents to receive your children off the buses early. And how can we extend the school day? Yeah. Well, until we get to the point where we can actually talk about hours and compensation for educators and extending the school day, I think this is a really appealing way to extend the school day for so many kids that would benefit and love to study, world languages.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, the interest will be, and hopefully we can meet it, but we'll do our best.
Yeah. Will definitely be, and it's things that our students who go to DITA Shida, though, a lot of times opt to go do some of the curriculum enrichment, which is maybe what confuses you.
We've had kids in both.
Yeah, but you can leave the after school care programs and go do that
for like chess club.
Yep, and then come back.
It's something that you can attend right after school.
Exactly.
So you don't pick up your kids, you just go right into the program.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we've talked about this in the school advisory committee too. It's, I think, something that we could think about building out even more. There could be more offerings. It could be more expanded. It could be expanded. Things, certain programs fill up, whereas others aren't well attended and get canceled. So I do think it's something. Maybe it's a next year thing, but I think it's something that we could look at as a committee and just say, like, what else can we do? What other things?
And we have a brand new director who's enthusiastic and ready to reinvigorate some of this. We did run an ABC club, the After the Bell Club, when school time started, and even though we heard clamoring that was wanted, we ran it for a year and then it just petered out. So
I was thinking, as Jesse was saying, like more so like having it structured in a way where you could like stack a few things and maybe extend a Monday school day by adding Spanish, chess club, and something else, but then have different scheduling throughout the week. So this would be something we'd want.
A little harder.
Yeah, we'd want to probably evaluate the structure of that.
Because if you don't want to do those three, how do you get back to chess that starts at 3? So we really will run them, and maybe we can expand the hours, but it basically would be an hour or a little bit more after the school hour.
And then,
for this, it's hard to double stack that.
Double stack, I see.
But the singular stack is great because then parents can pick up
exactly.
And I just want to, I think my last comment, unless there's other questions, would be just reiterating what Jesse said. This is a yes and. The FLES program is incredibly valuable, and there are other subjects that we need to give some time and attention to, both because we know they're important for kids and for their future, but also required by the state. And we want to balance data-driven decision-making and student achievement with the whole child. We're trying to do both. And I think one of the pieces that we really looked at was data and looking at the K-2 DIBEL scores and students' achievement with reading and writing. There's work to be done in terms of students learning English. And so if we can give that time back, it's a yes and in so many ways, and I wish we could have it all. It's not an easy decision.
We have a vote in 2 weeks, you said?
On the 24th.
24th.
So
Is that on calendar?
Yes.
yes,
It's a Zoom.
it's added.
It's a meet, Google Meets, whatever you say.
Okay.
Oh, it's on. It's remote.
It's gonna be virtual.
It's remote.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, if parents want to, community members, I encourage them to reach out to you, to reach out to me, to have community comment on the 24th.
And your FAQs is still live, so people can still submit, and you've been great about answering and posting those. Thank you.
We all received at least one. What's the best practice for fielding community inquiries and surfacing them to you or to Beth?
You can forward them to me, and I can respond, and then I forward it to Beth.
Okay.
So I've received a couple of emails, but I saw most of us were on it, and you were CC'd. I forward the ones that you were not CC'd on. Yeah.
And I did my best to incorporate kind of into our talking points answers to those questions, and we'll continue to do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll jump into so you're not going to vote on, this is a running budget now. So we're showing you some changes that have happened since we last presented your budget in November. You have an opportunity for a version 3.0 at your March meeting. So again, this is just adjustments that have come up from our discussions, things that we know more information about, but we will continue to refine your budget again until March. And keep in mind that you'll have a public hearing in March where we'll present the budget for the community to have comments, and then that will be your final approval before it goes on to the town for all of their different stages. So we do have several budget adjustments that we're bringing forward to you tonight to review. The first one is the reallocation of the director of the pre-K responsibilities. You heard about that in your current year, that we did that as a pilot this year. It's working well. There is time for the pre-K, for the SPED coordinator at Pine Hill based on caseload to pick up the pre-K. So that's a savings of $20,000 for Dover. We are bringing in one of the district-wide curriculum coordinators. So we're sharing those positions, 60% at the region, 20% at Sherburne, 20% at Dover. So your piece of that 20% is just $28,000. So that's an add. And as you can see off to the side, I tried to see, we've talked a lot about instructional leadership and elementary instructional time study to show what adjustments are based on things that we've talked about. We do have some retirements that you're seeing savings from. Again, our long-serving educators, when they retire, we bring in someone who's lower on the salary matrix, so there are savings there from that. And then we do, from the elementary instructional time study, do have a reduction of 2.2 FTEs in the specialist category. That totals $178,000. We're using additional pre-K revolving fund to fund the staff, the one class section that we are doing at Green. And what we've been seeing in both towns is that we were having, sometimes we had 2 classes, sometimes we had 2.5 classes at one point. So we always were leaving one of the sections in the general fund and one to pre-K revolving. Now that we're really at one section, we're going to start using some of that tuition that we're getting from the tuition paying students to help offset the one class rate. And we're doing that consistently between Dover and Sherburne. So there was some already incorporated in the version 1.0. We're picking up additional in version 2.0. What we try to do is actually, we're going to probably build into the budget that we will use as almost 100% of that year's tuition towards to help offsetting. Because we do have a base money now that didn't make sense to let that continue to grow. We are moving a 0.2 of the current BCBA at Pine Hill over To Chickering, this is continuing to address the needs of our Connections program. As you know, we've continued to rely on the staffing needs. So that allows us to sort of keep an employee whole in the district, but then use that additional time that's not needed at Pine Hill is needed at Chickering. So that's an additional $20,000. And then as I mentioned, because we're not bringing in both curriculum coordinators, we're also increasing your building-based PD so that we can bring some consultants in to help us on some maybe these smaller pieces. So that's in addition to what's already in the budget. So we're looking at a net reduction of version 1.0 of 220,000. So it brings your increase from version 2.0 down from 5.1% to 2.63. So if you always think about the 2.5%, you know, we've had some big reductions, but that sort of does help the town of Dover as you build that, as your base then comes down to that. We we're not touching out of district right now. We're going to wait and do one change to that in March. But keep in mind, you're going to experience something different going forward because you only have the placements now in your budget that are pre-K to 5.
Okay.
So your millions of dollars that you're used to seeing are now going to be sitting at the region, and so you'll have a much smaller cohort to manage. So that is good and bad because you guys are used to looking at the whole picture. So now we're sharing it across both districts, but right now we're not touching that. But that number includes the proposed placements as of now, any projected placements in transportation sits in that $245,000. Any questions on that? So again, we'll just, if we have any adjustments on version 3.0, we will then just build onto this sheet. But you can use this to, it has the function code. So that if you go back to your big budget book where you see like 2110, 2220, you can see what line item that goes into. We also take those numbers and update just your operating expense summary. So you have it by categories. You can see that, you know, it just decreased the 220,000. So you're getting down to the 2.63% increase. Keep in mind that your salary increases are sitting in the other educational expenditures. So until the contracts are settled and we spread all that, that does sit in a funny little place. But to keep in mind, the majority of that $400,000 increase is actually salary increases for every employee who works at Chickering.
Do we have a time scheduled for an offline debrief on the negotiations? I know we tend to do that out of public forum, right?
Yeah, that would have to be executive session. So I think that your members who are participating on that, when we have some valuable or pertinent information to share, I think we will. But we really are still sort of only 2 sessions into the real negotiations, but we're hopeful.
Okay, great.
That we'll be wanting to update you soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I got off the hook on that one, but thank you.
Don, can I ask one question from the status of appropriations?
Yeah.
There's a school committee expenditure under the 26 budget of $9,000. What is that?
That are the fees that we pay to be members of MARS.
Okay.
I'm sorry, MARS.
MASC.
MASC.
Yes.
MARS is region. Yep. MASC.
Yep.
And we also put the I put the tech there. Mars is about $4,500. Oh, and then it's also the school committee minute taker.
Oh, right. Okay.
Part of her salary. We charge her across all 3 districts.
Great. Okay, that makes sense. I just had no idea. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not we pay to be part of MASC.
Okay.
All school districts pay into that.
Makes sense.
So this proposed budget, this doesn't include the curriculum coordinator.
It does. It's for the elementaries. It's only $28,000.
Oh,
so if you see up, that's the second line item.
Yes, I saw.
Chickering's allocation for the district-wide curriculum.
So you think the 20% time
Yeah,
allocation would be enough with all the changes?
Yeah, luckily, you know, since Chickering and Pine Hill are moving in the same direction, that 40% of allocation time combined, I think would be enough to support the changes.
And I will say any given year, that is the standard allocation, but you may spend more time, right? Denny, that's how we wanted to align it though with how Denny's position is allocated to the district. So some years you might be heavier in one than the other, but it all evens out at the end.
Have you run the numbers for what two curriculum coordinators would look like?
Yeah, I'd already had built the budget.
I'm sure you have. It's a softball, but what
Yeah,
does that
so
look like?
it's not hard for the elementaries. It's a bigger bite for the region.
Because they're 60% of each.
There's so it was $168,000 add to the region.
So would that put us in the override? Like,
Yeah,
what would
that-
that do?
Well, I think that with some changes that we'll be making in version 3.0, I think we're going to be able to meet Sharpburn's number, still adding one of the curriculum coordinators. We are also talking about that. It might be better for us to stagger that addition in as well, get someone up and running, and then bring up the second person. So I think it makes more sense, even logistically, to spread that versus having two brand new people here and we've got to function what they're doing, and Denny could be just one of their, So I think we actually feel like a staged ad actually even makes more sense from an operational standpoint to get that up and running. And then
There was a lot of conversation about it because we actually started with 3 initially. That we never got to that point because we said that's just not realistic to ask for. We were going to have one at the elementary school and then a 6 through 12 humanities and a 6 through 12 STEM. Then we backed down and said 2 is more realistic and financially responsible. Then as we spent more time living in it, we really want this person to be successful. And so I think that starting off with 1 where Denny can, help make the changes K to 12 across all the disciplines and support this person as they integrate is probably a good way to go. Show their worth, and then it'd be easier to make the argument to make a second the following year.
That makes sense. Which discipline would they study or be focused on?
Probably more so the humanities side because of the literacy adoption.
And that would run K through 12?
Yeah, and somebody who's similar to Denny, experienced in curriculum instruction and assessment can help in generalities in curriculum and instruction and assessment in all disciplines, but could have that hopefully humanities background to really help literacy roll out, and then how that's going to affect the middle school, high school. We're shifting world language K to 5, which means that 6 through 12 is also going to have to shift, which falls under humanities. So there's a lot of work to be done in that realm. Not to say that there's not in STEM too, but I think it's a good starting point, and I think it's probably going to be more successful if we do one at a time, believe it or not.
Can I ask one question about that role, follow-up question, because I've gotten some questions on it. What is the portrait of somebody that is in that role? Is that somebody that's usually been in, how do you become an expert in this? Is it you've been a teacher for so long that you understand it? Do you have trained years in certain curriculum development? What does the resume look like of somebody in that role?
So
it's successful to be what you want them to, what are you looking for?
If we were only going to ever have one, we would want someone like a Denny or someone like a former Beth McCoy who has expertise in general curriculum understanding, general good practices instruction, general assessment. Denny brings the social studies. I brought the science. Anybody would bring whatever they taught in the classroom, right? I think ideally when we have 2, they'll have teaching experience on one side or the other, as well as a general understanding of how those things work. You can't be an expert in 4 disciplines, but you can have a sense of what good humanities teaching, what good STEM hands-on teaching looks like, and then really understanding, that vision that we talked about. What is a relevant curriculum? How do we get the students to do the heavy work of learning, and then authentic assessments so that we make sure that, yes, they're doing paper and pencil tests and we're preparing them for standardized tests at APs and all of those things, and having opportunities to do things that are creative with authentic audiences all at the same time. So it's a little bit of both, having the general understanding of the triangle of curriculum assessment and instruction, but also within having that background in one side or the other.
I think it could be somebody who's maybe been the K through 8 literacy coordinator, somebody who's been K through 12 social studies. It could be an elementary principal or an elementary assistant principal that has done a lot of district-wide work. I think that I think the district-wide experience is more important than the specific content area. The fact that they've been able to oversee an initiative across multiple grade levels, not just in one area, is probably going to be key.
I have another similar question. If we're thinking about adding education coordinators, and it sounds like we definitely want 1, but probably multiple, but we're also at the same time considering and very likely reducing some of the faculty, is there an option or a need to add more support in the classroom by way of more EAs, full-time subs, smaller student to teacher ratio through policy changes. Like, I guess we're taking faculty out, as you noted. We're adding administration. How do we ensure that our students have as much support as they possibly could have? Because I know that even the beginning of this year, we were looking for ways to increase student support, and I hope that the educational coordinators will do that as well. But are there other things that we could consider as we're planning the budget to do that?
So when we talk about taking educators out, that's primarily at the middle and high school.
Okay.
Actually, the middle school right now is only a guidance counselor. The high school is a guidance counselor and a teacher. The difference there is at the elementary level, every year we take the 3rd grade cohort or the 4th grade cohort. We roll them up, divide by 17 to 21, figure out how many sections we need. We adapt. Maybe a teacher needs to move from 2nd grade to 4th grade. Maybe we have too many sections, and luckily there's a retirement, so we just don't hire for that position. That's part of our kind of model of how we work at the elementary level. So we're not reducing educators at the elementary level unless we don't need a section in any grade level. The middle and high school, it's far harder because the middle school we're wed, rightfully so, as a former middle school teacher to the team model. So you're always going to have 4 teachers and 4 teachers, team ice and team fire, working with a group of kids, whether that's 70 kids each or 110 kids. That's the way it is. And so there's a little bit of inefficiency there. At the high school, you have students taking college prep level classes, you have honors, you have AP, then you have the standard courses that everybody has to take to graduate, and then you have all of the electives. You know, we've been recognized for the amount of electives that we offer as a tiny school. We don't want to give any of that away. And the fact that soon we'll be down 120 kids at the high school. Even if you said we have classes of 20, which is large for the high school, you're talking about 6 sections of kids taking World 1 or Algebra 2 or English 9 or biology. That's a teacher. So we are able to do what we normally do at the elementary school now at the high school because we have enough to reduce a teacher of 5 sections. So the question about the elementary support is a little bit different. I think we're having conversations, again, with Kate McCarthy, our Director of Student Services, with our principals about what would be helpful in the classroom. We're talking about the value and the best place to utilize educational assistance. We all understand that the profile of an elementary, middle, and high school student has changed over time. We want to be supportive of that, and we want to be realistic in terms of what's the tipping point for having making a difference in class size at the elementary level. And so we're mindful of that moving forward, and that conversation is going to be something that's ongoing.
Yeah, I just know now's the time to do it because we have a budget coming forth. So like if we need more, let's ask.
Mm-hmm.
I know teachers are hard, but EAs are easier.
Mm-hmm.
Subs might be easier. I don't know.
Yeah.
So like you guys tell us what you feel like you need to add if like more support could be delivered to these K through 5th graders by way of additional resourcing. Like I would love to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And there's a domino effect, right? Because our educators are super important. When our educators aren't available or when we want to do workshops or groups, our EAs are important. Sometimes they get pulled to fill in for educators. So there's the idea of the subs. It's all interrelated.
Yeah, it's super. I mean, my daughter is now in Miss Dow's class, and that Miss Dow left a vacancy elsewhere. And so like I'm sure we're feeling that. And so the more resourcing we can provide in that building to accommodate those changes in real time, I think would be helpful.
Particularly if we're adding more classroom instruction. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And reducing other teachers by way of Spanish.
Yes.
I mean, like it's not like the Spanish teachers aren't providing classroom facilitation daily, but there are adults there.
Right.
I'll say too that just the applicant pool for EAs is very tight. Like it's not like there's tons of people out there. It's really hard sometimes to fill these vacancies. So although that seems like a good solution, we have a hard time. Every district has a hard time filling these positions.
I have a moral obligation to make a recommendation for my wife on this one because this has been her passion point on EAs. Her best friend was an EA at BC, an educational student at BC, and ended up being an EA in Sudbury and is now like a education coordinator in Sudbury. But anyways, the point being, a lot of these schools have like really capable students that want experience, and so I would just like to ask that we think expansively about where to find that EA talent, whether it be through internships, associate programs, or anything else. You, I'm sure, know where to find these people better than I, but now I can go home and say that I suggested it.
And I wrote it down.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's a great stepping stone where, you know, most
Yeah.
of our EAs do become educators.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ms. Horbacheski was amazing. We loved her, and it was tragic that we lost her because we didn't have a full faculty position. But I'm sure that there is a great pipeline of students who want to be EAs and who want to be teachers, and then we can grab them early. You guys, I'm sure, know where to find them.
All right. Thank you.
So in your memo too is just the upcoming dates, because just so you're aware of what the town's dates are as well as far as the budget process.
Thank you, Jen. Next, moving to, I think, consent items, right? Okay. So
Can I take the votes for 3 at the same
Yeah,
time?
unless there's any changes. You could.
yeah, so we need to vote on approval of Dover School Committee minutes from November 18th, the town reports, and also preschool tuition for year 27 rates.
Great.
Is there any comments, any questions about any of those? All right.
They look good.
And just to reiterate for anybody who's forgotten, the preschool tuition rates are for students who are our peer students, students with special education needs and services come for free because we should be supporting them in their needs, and then we tuition in students to be their peers in the classroom, and that's what that figure is.
Thank you.
How much is it?
Latest
3 days, 6,720, 5,11,9.
All right.
It's a
Okay.
great program.
When my kids were in preschool, they didn't get in, if I know.
We got lucky before.
And here I am.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the Dover School Committee minutes from November 18th, the town report, and the preschool tuition for year 27 rates?
Kate Cook, so moved.
Thank you, Kate.
Kevin Bilkey, second.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussions? All in favor? All right, motion here, all 3 carries unanimously. Next is informational items. We have the Regional School Committee minutes from November 4th and December 2nd, and Sherborne School Committee minutes from October 14th. Any items for March 5th that you have?
So that will be your budget hearing.
Yeah.
So we'll do a formal presentation, community's invited, and there's an opportunity after the budget is presented for community to ask questions.
Great.
And then we'll close the public hearing, and you guys can ask your questions, and then we'll vote the final budget that night.
Excellent.
And we will or will not have union negotiation.
Well, we won't by March 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just a placeholder, remember that we're going to have the virtual meeting with Sherborne on February 24th. And that's an opportunity for between now and then to collect additional feedback from the community. If Denny and I need to provide any updates based on those questions and feedback, and then for you to deliberate. And if you're able to vote at that night, it would be beneficial for the budget timeline and the contract timeline. If you're not ready, then that's your will and wish as well.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Kate Cook, so moved.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
Kevin, Jesse's gonna second.
You go, Kevin.
No, I'll second it.
Thank
Kevin
you.
Bilkey, second.
Right.
You guys got it, you got it.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned at 8:06.